Alright, welcome back to the channel. So behind me is the Case 855D, and I know I had a video a couple weeks ago where I was clearing some land up at the power line and this thing got stuck in the mud. So a lot of you pointed out in that video that it could have a miss, and thanks for pointing that out, because I don't really have an ear for the sound of that, and I've basically been driving this thing for the last couple years and it doesn't seem like it made much of a difference in sound to me. But I think it's worth exploring just to see if that's true or what's going on with this machine. So this video will basically be tearing into this engine here. We'll see if we have a bad injector or maybe some low compression. We'll kind of diagnose it as we go, but hopefully everything's good. Maybe just replace an injector or a fuel line, but I'm going to go through the diagnostics with that and see what we end up finding. So just to start out, I took the panel off here, and of course I have my bucket up, always have my safety latch in place on the cylinder there, that way it can't fall, because this thing can be extremely dangerous under the hydraulics. But if we look at this engine, this is the this is the 5.9 Cummins engine, so it's a 6-cylinder diesel, and I have the exhaust manifold on here where I had this off before because I replaced this hole. I was patching this hole. This exhaust, it's not the same exhaust you would get for a truck. It's completely different, and this, you cannot find this exhaust aftermarket anywhere. I looked on all kinds of websites. The only place it could come from is Lithuania, and it was like $1,500 for this exhaust. So it wasn't worth getting a new one. And I was able to just patch most of this with some cast iron rod on the stick welder. So I might end up patching this hole again. So this is the hole in the exhaust right now, and I'm pretty sure that's what a lot of people were hearing whenever it was louder than expected, because when I first patched it before the hole opened back up, it did make a big difference on the exhaust sound. So if there is a miss, I'm not sure which cylinder it will be, but basically what we're going to do is just, these are their supply lines for each cylinder. So we have this 2, 3, 4, 5 back here, and 6 way up front behind the hoist there. So basically all I'm going to do is start the machine up. And I also have this thermal gun in case we need it, but hopefully we can figure this out just by looking at the injector lines. And if I just crack each of these open one by one, the engine should start to die as I crack each one, or fade out a little bit more because we're getting less fuel and less power. So if I crack one of these open and nothing happens, then that's going to be our bad cylinder. So let's get to it and see what we get. Okay, well, I think I have the camera set up good enough. It's not going to fall here. So I'm just going to start it up real quick and we'll let it run, and then we'll kind of see the sound the engine makes, and then we'll get to opening up these injector lines to see what it sounds like. Okay, so that kind of gives us a little bit of indication of what's going on, but hopefully this makes sense. I would set the thermometer here to roughly plus or minus 1 degree Fahrenheit. So when I check out this cylinder here, the first one towards the actual cab, I don't know if this would be 1 or 6, but I was getting, I mean, obviously it's about 95 now, but I was only getting about 95 degrees from this cylinder, where all the other cylinders I was getting roughly 175, like this one, 150 now that it's off, 200 on this one. So maybe this one and the first or 6 back here are on the same stroke, so this one's working hard. This one, same thing, about 170, about 170, and up front here, also about 170 whenever I had a good shot at it. So what I'm thinking is this back cylinder here and this cylinder here are likely in power stroke at the same time, and since this rear cylinder is not firing, this one's having to work a little bit harder, causing a slight overheat problem whenever you actually get this thing running really hard and working really hard. So I'm going to try that. We'll dive in. We'll see kind of what we get into here. Again, I'm still going to try to crack these injector lines, and we'll see if that changes anything. If this agrees with what the thermometer is saying, this cylinder, when I crack this rear cylinder here, it should not make a difference in the performance of the engine, but the rest of these should make a pretty big difference, especially this one that was at 200, since they're likely on the same power stroke, might actually even stall the machine. So let's get that done and we'll see how it looks after that. Okay, so we're going to fire this thing up. We're going to check the injector lines here. I don't have the metric wrench that I'm assuming these are metric, so it looks like it's about a 16 to 17 millimeters. So just got out my metric crescent wrench for now, and we're going to get these things cracked open. Again, I'm going to start with these cylinders down here and work my way back, because I'm assuming that these are actually going to cause some performance drop in the engine, while this first cylinder here, or 1 or 6, is going to probably not make a difference. So let's get this started up and we'll see. Okay, interesting. So this one, actually it was the first one that didn't do anything. The first one I did. So this will be either cylinder, I'm just gonna number from the fan back for now. So I'm not sure if that's exactly how these are numbered, but that's how I'm gonna reference it. Is the number 3 cylinder here in the front did not make a difference. So you could probably hear in the video that 4, 5, and 6 actually did. So I'm assuming that since this exhaust manifold was so much less temperature, that maybe it was just, since it's on a single cylinder and it's working its way this way out the exhaust, it probably just built temperature as it progressed. So there's 2 more cylinders I need to check. They're a little bit harder to get to. One's way behind the exhaust manifold here, and one is way up in front, so probably won't be able to show those very well, but hopefully if those give me some decreased engine performance, then we know cylinder number 3 here, we have something going on with the injector, because I do see fuel coming out. So we're getting fuel to the injector. It's just whether or not the injector is actually firing, or something's going on with number 3 cylinder. So if worst case, we can try to switch 2 of these injectors. Maybe we'll switch 4 and 3, since we know 4 was working well. And if the problem follows the injector, then we know pretty straightforward, that's just an injector. And if not, then we're going to be getting into more of compression testing and see where we're at from there. So let's get these 1 and 2 cylinders cracked open, see how that affects things, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I have this set up now so I can crack open cylinder number 1. I did look up the naming convention on here. So we have 1 starting in the front, 6 in the back. So we are having some problems with cylinder number 3. We're still going to check cylinder number 2, and I have it set up right now so I can crack it open by reaching behind the exhaust manifold here. So let's try to get cylinder 1 done here without getting into the fan, hopefully, and then we'll worry about cylinder number 2 behind the exhaust manifold. So let's get that one done. We'll see how it looks. Also wanted to mention that this is high pressure fuel, so I am wearing safety glasses. So, you know, this is kind of just a standard, easy way to diagnose this. So if you end up doing this, be careful, but, you know, do it at your own risk, because high pressure fuel can be very dangerous and you do not want to get sprayed with this stuff. Okay, cylinder number 2. Okay, clearly that one is good too. Had a slight loss of performance on that one as well. So just really need to get cylinder number 1 here. to make sure that everything else is good, and it's actually number 3 giving us problems. But again, it is just so hard to get to that number 1 cylinder with the fan in the way. Get that 2 tighten back up and try to get it number 1 some more. Okay, so finally got cylinder 1 cracked open enough there, and I did hear a little loss in performance there. So I'm thinking that even though number 3 was the only one we didn't hear anything from, I think that's going to be our main issue. So I did have a small leak up here on 1, but since it was still showing usefulness on the injection, so hopefully this number 3 is our problem. But I'm going to check it one more time, and then we'll work on maybe just swapping 2 of these injectors to kind of diagnose to see that. Okay, well, at least these 2 shouldn't be too bad. Take off this return. Okay, so it looks like there's a retaining nut on these now that I have this out. So I looked up size on that. It seems like a 24 millimeter. So I'm gonna see if I can get these out, get them cleaned up a little bit here first. Try to keep the crud down as much as we can. Okay, so it looks like now that I have this 2 return lines off, I can get this 24 millimeter retaining nut off here. Then we'll worry about pulling the injectors out. Okay, that's loose. Of course, I might have to move this line. Maybe. Oh, we got it. Yeah. Actually, let's see if we just wiggle these things out of here. It'd be nice. All right, so here's our problem injector. So we do have some grit on there, some grime, of course. Lots of carbon buildup on the tip there, so let's get the known good one out of here. We'll see how it compares. So also some grit there. Must have been some kind of assembly adhesive or assembly lubrication there. But also a lot less carbon buildup, very wet compared to the other one. The other one was bone dry. So let's get these switched, and just for peace of mind here, we'll see if it makes any difference and go from there. So this should be clocked based on this little ball here to go in the cylinder a specific way. Looking at these two injectors, I'm missing the crush washer on this one. It didn't come out of the cylinder, but I have a much bigger nozzle on the one on the right, which was the known good one. So I'm wondering if this wasn't replaced at some point, or maybe it's just a different injector. It is a little bit different. Interesting. If you know why there's an extra sleeve down here on this one, feel free to leave it in the comments. Maybe I'm missing something here, but other than that small sleeve on the bottom of the injector, it looks like the exact same injector. But either way, see about getting that crush washer out and swapping these over. Of course, I can't remember if copper is magnetic, but we'll give it a shot here and see what happens. No, I guess not. Hoping there's a crush washer in there. Maybe it never made it. This is a different injector. Strange. Oh yeah, I see it down there. I just gotta fish it out. So hopefully I can see it there. So there's a crush washer down there. It's just almost need like a mirror to get this thing out. Okay, well, that was quite the job. So I've been trying to get that copper crush washer out for about 2 hours now, and it turns out on these old injectors it's actually an adapter sleeve, a 7mm to 9mm. So I guess that has something to do with the injectors and using common injectors, but we were able to see online that instead of just being a washer, it's actually an adapter sleeve. So this one on our bad cylinder was actually stuck, and that's why our two injectors were slightly different, because one still had the sleeve on it. Our good one here had the sleeve on it, which I was able to take off somewhere around here and align a tap, one of these taps here. And this just happens to be a 5/16 by 24, and that was able to fit right down in that bore just well enough that I could thread in maybe 2 or 3 threads. And then here it is. So this one came off of the good injector, and I was able to thread in 2 or 3 threads with this adapter, put the vice grips on it, and then using a crowbar over there actually pry against the exhaust manifold just enough to get this thing out of here. And you can see just how much carbon buildup is on this thing. I mean, it was really in there. And even on the good injector, to get this one off that was stuck on the actual injector here, it took a good bit of effort. I mean, I had to have a wrench on the nut on the top, and then I just had some vice grips to wiggle it free until it came loose. Once it broke loose, it slid off pretty easily, but it took a lot more effort than I thought it would to get that free. So I was hoping to be able to switch these 2 injectors and test this out today, but with having to destructively remove these crush washers or these adapters or whatever you would want to call them, I don't think that's going to happen today. So I think I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to get a new set of these adapters. I think they're like $12 for a whole kit, and maybe I'll get an injector. They're about $55–60 for this 12 valve Cummins. So I don't know if it'd be worth it just to get it rather than trying to swap these to see. But yeah, I'll think about that right now. But I definitely need new crush washers at this point, because I don't think these are going to reseal that well. If they do, I'm not sure if it'll be worth trying it out, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll throw these back in, see if they'll seal at least enough to see if this injector is this injector is good and we have a cylinder problem. But I'm thinking it's going to be an injector. So we'll get this in, see if it seals, and then go from there. Okay, well, I just threw this back together just for my own fun here. So I don't know if those crush washers are going to seal, but they should be able to do a good enough job. But put the return line back on just quickly. Have our number 3 and our number 4 cylinder still put back together. So the number 4 cylinder should now be what was the bad injector on number 3. So ideally, number 4 cylinder becomes our problem now, because if number 3 still remains the problem, then we might have to get into some compression testing or see what's going on with that bore, because there could be a couple other issues, maybe with the valves or something. But let's see if we can diagnose this number 4 as a bad injector. But it might need to bleed the system since I had them all off. So we'll do that first, and then we'll get into diagnosing here. Okay, well, that's a good sign. So I'm happy with that. That, if you heard, as soon as I cracked open number 3, we lost power again. And of course, nothing happened when I used 4. So a little bit of diesel that leaked out, smoke in there, but that means it's a pretty easy fix. So relatively easy anyway. So that means I'm going to order a new injector, and I'm going to order a new seat or one of those adapters for the other injector. So I'll pull 3 and 4 out again. We'll put the new injector in and replace cylinder 4. We'll get those 2 new crush washers in there, and we should be good to go. So that's making me feel a little better. I think an injector is about $60 to $70, so relatively pretty cheap fix, and should be running at full power then. So hopefully that fixes our slight overheating problem too, because like I said at the beginning, if you run this thing for maybe an hour, hour and a half, actually doing some, heavy pushing or actually doing some like heavy work with it, it does tend to get up into the red. So I always thought it was just some kind of cooling issue with the fan, but I guess a bad injector would be a culprit for that, as long as the other ones had to work harder to compensate for the one bad one. So should be good, easy fix, and I will catch up with you guys whenever I get that injector in. Thanks. All right, so we're a couple days later and we're back working on the dozer. So I was able to learn a little bit more about these injectors and these sleeves here for the injectors that we ended up needed. So since this is the naturally aspirated 5.9, I had to look up my model number for the engine because my identification plate was missing, of course. So this ended up being a 6-590 engine out of this year case. So for my naturally aspirated engine, I went with this part number. Just went through a generic diesel online supplier, so pretty happy with it. Came pretty quickly. And of course this gives me the injector and has the part number stamped in the body there. So the injector with the 7mm nozzle, and then it has the hold down nut and a couple caps on the threads here. So the only other thing I needed was these other 2 sleeves. So this was the 7mm to 9mm sleeve. So I'm still not sure why they ended up doing this, but I got 2 new ones just in case. And the part number that went with this injector is right here. Hopefully you can see that. It's 3919358. So these sleeves, this injector, we're going to be replacing. It's actually injector number 4 now because I still had them swapped. So number 4 cylinder is the bad one. So let's get these swapped and we'll see how it sounds after that. Okay, so it was a 10 millimeter on the return line here. It's nice to go down to just a few tools now. $10 millimeter banjo bolt, our little copper crush washer for this line. I have a 24 millimeter for the actual injector, but crack this inlet line first. Let's see if we can squeeze this over. Okay. Okay, so here's our old bad injector with our sleeve on there. The only other thing I'm seeing on this one is that this has this O-ring here to keep the crud out of the cylinder where the injector goes. Not the actual cylinder with the piston, but I wouldn't want to have a bunch of garbage going down in the cylinder. So I'm going to check for this O-ring size and see if I have this one, and we'll put that on too. Okay, luckily I was able to find one of those gaskets in stock here. I just have a universal kit, so it looks like it's about a 15/16 ID and a 1 1/16 OD in the kit. So take these nozzles off. Of course, we get our adapter on. So our copper crush adapter just goes right over top, and we'll slide this right down into the bore. And that fell off, of course. So, okay, good, lined up. And that's it. Get our torque spec for this hold down nut, and we should be good to go. And of course, we'll change the other one too, since that crush washer was pretty beat up. Of course, for some reason, the new injector is not a 24 millimeter. What a pain. Pull this out of here and see what we can do. Well, my mistake, it is a 24 millimeter. I must just not be lined up properly. And of course, this is such a newer nut. Probably doesn't have as much slop as the other ones. A little bit harder to get onto. So I'll try this again. There we go, much better. All right, of course, from what I've read online, we are at 89 inch-pounds, so not much. So I got the little, okay, 1/4 inch drive here. We should be good to go on that one. And then we're just going to put this back together. We'll leave the injector line loose so we can bleed it easier. Put our banjo bolt return line back in. No, this doesn't work. Looks like our banjo bolt is on the wrong side. Interesting. Let's see what's going on here. It looks like it was just clocked slightly off. So we're going to try this again. It does match the other one. That's better. Okay. So I think did not have it seated in there properly. So no big deal. That's why we take our time, second guess things. 89. And we're lined up a lot better now. Okay. I don't like that this is loose in here for some reason. Okay, so I have the injector here, and I'm just going to slide the adjustable cap on here like this. I'm just going to place a little bit of grease on here just to kind of hold it in place while I put it in there. That's enough just to keep it from sliding off the end while I get this thing down in here. There we go. Okay, so I think we had a problem with our seat there. It did not want to drop in all the way. I think our adapter was slightly off or something. Didn't want to let it seat all the way. It's seating a lot lower now, and our holes lined up. So let's get this thing down to that 89 inch-pounds and we'll see how it looks. There we go. Much better. Still a little loose in there though. I don't know what's going on with this. The other ones are not loose. Oh yeah, okay. I think our torque spec is off. I need to check this torque spec. It's tight now. Probably went to closer to 120 inch-pounds. Okay, after some more reading, it looks like it's actually 44 foot-pounds. I don't know where that 89 inch-pounds came from. I must have been looking at a different type of 5.9 engine, but 44 foot-pounds makes a lot more sense. It seemed like when I unbolted these, it was a lot more than 10 foot-pounds. So let's get this thing down to 44. Looks like I was actually a little bit shy on that based on this torque wrench. And there we go. And that's way sturdier. So that makes me feel better. This was just a couple inch-pounds, so I'll just tighten it up snug. And we'll change this crush washer in number 3, just so it makes me feel a little bit better. And we should be good to go. We'll see how this thing runs after this new injector is installed. Alright, so it's got the tap in the end of the holder here. See, shouldn't be too stuck this time, not like last time. So hopefully if I can just get a small bite on it is all it needs. There we go. Alright, makes it a lot easier. Alright, so we have our older good injector, so same thing. I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of grease on here just to help hold our new sleeve on. Not going to bother changing the O-ring on this one since it seemed to be doing all right. All right. Be able to do leave that one loose. Try to get these bled. So I think everything is out. All right, should be good to go. Try and start this thing up. We'll see how the sound does, and then we'll take it for a little test drive, see if there's any change in power. All right, so here we go. First shot at starting it. Might have to bleed some of the injectors. You see right away there's a pretty bad leak on our new injector, actually from down below. I'm not sure why that will be leaking, because it is tightened down all the way, unless I'm missing an O-ring somewhere that didn't come with the kit. But let's give it a shot here and we'll see. It's leaking right from behind this return line. So it does sound a lot better, but we have a pretty nasty leak. If I look at the old injector, the bad one, they're actually leaking right around this ring here. And on this injector, I have this little metal snap ring here that the nut just seats over, and there was nothing else. There was no other O-ring or anything, and that's how the new one was too. So unless that isn't seated right, that'd be the only thing I could think of. So let's take this one out of here. We'll check it one more time really good and see if we missed something. Okay, so this is kind of what I'm looking at with these injectors. So this is my new one here on the left, and this is the old one that's bad. So if you look under this retaining nut, you have this little snap ring, and this one, when you snap it over, it's rock solid, almost no play in it. This one, even though it's snapped over, there's such a slight 1/16 inch wobble to it. And I'm not sure why it would be doing that. It seems like it should be tight in here. I mean, this is the only mating surface there is that little shoulder. So I might have to look into this a little bit, see why this retaining clip isn't quite as strong as I thought it would be. I mean, you think it would, as you torque it down, it would almost have like a concave effect, but I don't know. We're going to look into this a little bit more and see if we can find out something else. Okay, so I kind of revisited this after reading some stuff online. So went to 50 foot-pounds on this nut. So just in case there was any kind of slight differences or slight discrepancies in the wear, seemed like a lot of people were saying that if they went to 50 or 55 foot-pounds on the retaining nut, that fixed that fuel leak, which it looks like it did. So I'm not seeing any more fuel leak there. I do have a little bit of boiling or bubbling water or bubbling fuel coming out of number 3 cylinder. So I did read online too that if any of the fuel got down in there between the cylinder and the injector, that could be boiling off as it gets hot. So I'm gonna start this thing up. We'll see how the sound changes, and I'll show you that a little bit of bubbling that's coming up out. We'll watch that, see if it goes away after a little bit. So I was able to tighten that other injector nut up to about 50 foot-pounds, and it seems like it got rid of those bubbles, so it might have just been a little bit loose. So let's get this thing working a little bit. We'll see how it does with the new power and if it's any difference. right, well, I just ran this thing for about an hour or so, I'd say, and it seems like it's doing a lot better. It's definitely a lot quieter. No more overheating problems. I was really pushing some trees and moving some stumps out of the way, so I was expecting it to get up closer to the red, but great job maintaining its temperature, good power, sounds a lot better, a little bit quieter even. So all right, I think I'm going to call this one good for now, and just have a couple other little things to do to it before it goes back to work for little other jobs. But I'm going to get that exhaust fixed up and maybe just clean out this cab a little bit since there's a lot of sticks in there. But until then, thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks.